Welcome to Nature's Guardians. I'm Micah Siegel. Each week, I talk with people working to save and help animals around the world. They are nature's guardians, and you can become one too. Today, I'm talking with John Garcia, founder of Soldiers for Wildlife Conservation. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks for having me,
So,
Micah.
yeah. So, where are you, and what's your organization about?
So I'm currently located in South Africa in a amazing place called Hoedspruit. And what we do, I came into this very blind and not knowing where exactly we fit in. It was just about dedicating my life and whatever kind of resource that I can provide, whether there was skill sets or whether it was financial, to a problem that I deeply cared about. So our mission sets changed over the years. We landed in Zambia about 7 years ago, and I moved around countries a bit, to find out where I can really help and try and fill in gaps, essentially. So there, I moved around a bit. I was going out with random ranger teams to find out, what struggles they were facing on a daily basis, how I could potentially help them. And that's where my heart was. My heart was with the people on the ground that are doing this, because coming over here, first and foremost, you understand the difficulties that they're up against. With all the factors that set into these countries out here that make it the way it is. I mean, with corruption, mass poverty, lack of jobs, lack of education, and instability. They're up against a monster, and and very few that are defending these wild regions. So my heart was with the people on the front line. So I moved around and worked with them, trained with them, and then, I mean, most of the time, I mean, they were actually training me. So I was providing them with some things that they could learn, but it's definitely been a learning curve for me to come out here and learn from them what they're going through and how I can help. So I eventually settled down in Zambia, and I ran a ranger team. I partnered up with former captain in the Rhodesian SAS. So we worked together for a while, and we managed a property and a ranger team in an area that was pretty rife with elephant poaching. And then just the basic game meat, snaring and hunting and all that other industry.
Yeah.
So we were stationary there for a while, and that's what we did. We were growing, and the real significance that came out of that for me, and what I really learned and took away from that, was the the relationship with the communities and how important that is. This is not just working to protect wildlife, it's working to, help other people as well. And if we don't focus on the people, we're just going to be fighting this on our heels until it's all over. We have to work with the communities that surround these wild regions. And I firsthand, through him, actually, began to understand that the better relationships I have with them, the better everything's going to be for everybody. If we can provide jobs, if we can, provide them with the education they need to understand the value of biodiversity, that it keeps giving back as long as we keep it healthy, then that's good for everybody, right? It's good for the wildlife, and it's good for humans. So by
Yeah.
developing those relationships with the local communities, we were able to almost put poaching there to a complete halt. We were being given massive pieces of land by the chief of the community, to protect, because we were employing, their people. And everything everything got very hairy at that point, when we started to do really well with the communities, because the government decided to chirp in. And because we weren't paying them bribes and giving them money either, that's when things really got bad, and the death threats started and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, what really sucked my soul away from me there was, I'd given everything that I had. I mean, I came out of the Navy, I had no money, and I was giving everything I had, every donation I received, working 3, 4 jobs when I went home, coming back here with the donations I received, and then trying to help my rangers and the communities. And I've got people in suits that are getting paychecks that are trying to take all that away. And it seemed to me at that point that there was no pride in country to a lot of these people. They didn't care about their, fellow citizens and people that they were, supposed to take care of, and uphold the law and all that. It just was out the window. So eventually it got to a point where there was so much red tape by the government, I had to find an alternative. I had donors' dollars coming in at that point that I'd began to raise, and people were contributing monthly, through the website. Most people that I'd grown up with and, lived amongst my entire, childhood, from my community back home. And so I had to move, and I came here, just because I got pointed in this direction by a friend of mine who was out here asking me to help him. So it ultimately led to me just coming out here and staying for longer periods and understanding that this is a whole different world here in South Africa. Where I was in Zambia was very super rustic. Living amongst the communities, the closest market was like 2 hours away. The closest city was six. So we were really out there. I mean, it was it'd be a really difficult place to start tourism. But out here, that being next to the Kruger National Park, which, after all the interviews you've conducted, you probably know this is what the Kruger has gone through and what South Africa specifically has gone through with the rhino. So coming out here to Hoodsprit, to a place that's been established over the years, there's a lot of ranger teams that are, very well equipped to manage properly. There's still
Mhm.
gaps and things like that, but from what I had learned in Zambia and taken here, I wasn't gonna get to a place where I was gonna manage a bunch of rangers. It seemed like that was pretty taken care of in this area. So my goal was then to, okay, well, there's gaps everywhere. Let's see where we can fill in. So the first year I probably spent just working with other organizations and teaching rangers specialized skill sets and assisting to dehorn rhinos and funding different kind of projects with people that we shared similar values with. So um, once that all started, then I was able to really get an idea of where I want to go and not reinventing wheels either. So since there's so much good work being done, yes, we're going to focus on gaps we need to be filled, but we're also going to help other people, lift their projects as well because they're doing great work. And one of the biggest issues about conservation is the amount of ego in it. And everyone says they're out here to protect the wildlife, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of people are like, no, we have to do it this way. It has to be my way, or we can't do it at all. And that's at the expense of what they say they care about. So that that's one of the biggest speed bumps in the road in conservation is ego. But anyway, so right now what we do is we do specialized ranger training in a couple different areas. We do community, especially youth empowerment and education. We go to local communities and we support their educational systems. We support their community centers. We take the kids into the park, which we think is imperative, right? These are kids that live within a couple kilometers of a national park and have never seen an elephant or a rhino or a lion. Then how do we expect these kids to grow up and be 20 years old, 25 years old, jobless, and respect, these animals? You're almost asking the impossible, right? Without being amongst something or witnessing something, you can never really come to love it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's tricky and it's a huge project. It's not just going out and being reactionary, and I keep saying this to people is if we keep focused on being reactive, we're never going to get ahead of the problem. We need to be proactive. You've got to provide stability and job opportunities to these people and infrastructure within these communities on these boundaries. Otherwise, we're just going to be, like I said earlier, on our heels fighting an uphill battle. So we focus on that. We assist in just local law enforcement and crime related matters. We've got a canine unit here. I've got three of our own dogs, and the whole thing is voluntary. I haven't made money in 7 years myself. It's been tough to be in your 30s and not have. You probably have more money than me over there, Micah. But so we assist in crime related matters, whether it's conservation or not. And the more you're out here, the more you understand that the ones that are poaching the elephant, the rhino, the pangolin, um, or the ones that are collecting the pangolin after they've been picked up, because that's very opportunistic. Those are really bad dudes. These are not good people. These are not people that are looking for a dollar to feed their family. These are serious criminals, and a lot of them are interactive with a lot of the other major crime industries, whether it's drugs, weapons, human trafficking, the whole thing. So that's why you can't just combat wildlife crime. You've got to combat crime as a whole. I mean, one of the last, oh, I was in the Kalahari. I'll give you an example. I know you guys said you wanted specifics. We were somewhere out in South Africa. Certain specifics I can't say, but I'll be as specific as I can. Is the main poacher, the main rhino poacher that was coming in to the property to hunt a rhino, which we happened to be there for next to assist on, was also convicted of multiple murders and rapes and the whole thing. So it's people like this that are going after these animals, and I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying that the majority of them are really just not good people. So that's why we focus on crime as a whole because we've pretty much seen that, and that's the message that we need to get out there. Is a lot of this is organized crime. So that's why we have to put a focus on that. So that's just another gap that we're trying to help fill is assist hands-on. Financially, it's been tough because fundraising's been tough. Very, very difficult times to fundraise. So the ranger stuff, the community stuff, the regional crime, And then we also just got into funding rescue operations, and we only do that if the helicopter's needed. So one of my buddies is the helicopter pilot here, and there's just a lot of cases where animals are in need of rescue from any kind of poaching related incident, but it's mainly because of wire snares. The snaring here is, I'm not sure how much you've been through the snaring or have heard about this, but it's by far the lead form of poaching out here. And it's the terrible thing about snaring is these guys that are doing this and setting snares, it's not, you're not always getting what you're intending to get. You're getting the unintended as well, which means if you put a snare out for a small diker or an impala, you also can get, a wild dog, a baby buffalo, whatever. It can catch whatever in it. And it's not sustenance poaching anymore, which means they're not just poaching for meat on the table, they're commercial poaching. So you'll go to a lot of these scenes where that we'll find, and there'll be dozens of snares set in one area, and there'll be, let's just say 7 to 10 animals killed. The poacher can only carry 2 or 3 home, and the rest of them just rot. So it's a waste, and it's decimating population. So because of that reason, we've been asked by friends that are in the field, whether they're veterinarians or my helicopter buddy, they've asked me to, if I could assist, and we don't have the money to do that, but I put out some emergency emails, and luckily enough, a couple people responded, and we were able to get it going, and they've been helping us privately fund these rescue operations that are costing us, it's like $500 an hour just for the helicopter fuel. And sometimes we have to have that asset, for the rescue. And now what we're doing is taking, if it's a snare related incident, what we'll do is we'll take that snare, which if it's on one animal, it's not a group of snares, so it's not a ton of wire. It's just that one snare that actually this stick right here killed, was the snare was attached to this and killed an African wild dog. This was about a week ago. So I just took the snare off, and we give them to an organization out here. And what they do is they take snares and they make jewelry out of it to give back to conservation. So what they'll do is they'll make a wire snare bracelet, and then they'll sell it in one of the stores here or whatever, and they'll get money back for that. And when the veterinarians need to go out and save an animal that has potentially still some life left, and then they'll pay for the veterinarian's bills. And we do the same thing, but we do it for the helicopter fuel. So it's kind of a tag team duo kind of thing. But we're going to make our own bracelet that we're going to use from any snare. But these ones specifically are limited edition from the animal that was dying, and we sell that for a higher price, and that just refills the pot. So if we pull a snare off a wild dog, we then sell those wire snares, we get 500 US dollars, and then that's going to fund the next one. That could be a giraffe, could be a buffalo, could be whatever. So those are essentially the 4 initiatives that we're working on right now to.
So tell us about your work with rangers.
Mhm. So with Rangers, it's a mix. We do gear donations and things like that to whatever they need when we come in contact with them. We assist them in the field for poaching related instances if we're called upon. But for specific training, I'll give you an example. A lot of Rangers go through a basic training that can be 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it might be, and then they graduate. There's some things within those curriculums that it just isn't enhanced enough, and it's very basic level learning when these guys or girls are going out in the field, and they're in front of dangerous game all the time, and that's essentially the biggest threat, right? Is the wild animals. I mean, it's not every day. I mean, region dependent. If you're bumping into poaching activity, and here right now that's just not the case. So it's a very tedious job. It's a lot of times the same thing day in and day out. It's 3 weeks away from their families. Um, a week at home, life on the line, low pay, and low morale, because you've got a lot of these syndicates in the communities that are bringing more money to the communities than the Rangers are. So they're, in a way, they're ostracized, or they're looked at like law enforcement. So in a lot of cases, these syndicates bully the families in them so much that they'll tell them they'll kill them if they don't give them over information and things like that. So the welfare of rangers is something that we're really, really trying to grow and specialize in. But one of those programs is like they do a very basic first aid for a lot of rangers. So at that point, and working, I actually started doing this with someone here. We don't work together so much anymore. But the program was great, and the founders of it have developed it more so for me now to keep it growing. Is on the medical side of things. Let's go above and beyond first aid, because God forbid, one of these guys gets shot, or you're hit by a buffalo or a lion. and things like that, and they don't know how to treat their their comrade essentially that's going to bleed out and die, and that's the number one way of dying for these guys in the field is the loss of blood. So it's essentially a stop the bleed program, but it's a bit more advanced. So what we do is we get fake wounds that have like these little it's just like a tube, and what we do is we pump fake blood through it. So the blood just squirts everywhere, and so we'll go through a full day of theory and understanding how to use the equipment that we're providing in a very specific first aid kit, but we're not a basic first aid kit, but it's called TCCC, Tactical Casualty Combat Care. So that comes with a number of items in it, whether it's gauze, trauma shears, Israeli bandage, tourniquets, the whole thing. So I think we've got 6 pieces right now, but growing to put inside this kit. But we're going to start calling it the Ranger First Aid Kit. So the RFAC. And every time we do a medical training, we donate an RFAC to each ranger if we have enough supplies. If not, then it goes to every other ranger. And then because they're always at least paired up. They're in groups of 2 or 3 most of the time. So each one essentially it starts out with going through the theory, how to use each piece of equipment inside that kit, and then putting it to practical use. So we go through all that in the day, and then we test their knowledge at night. So when it comes to like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night under the cover of darkness, we put them through a test where there's almost no light at all. They can't take out phones. They use little chem lights, and that's all they've got. And then they roll up to us for the first time, and they've never seen these fake wounds before, and there's blood squirting everywhere, and people are down, and they've got to come treat us. I mean, a lot of times it's comical. We're not there to yell, scream, any of that. They're there to learn, and we need to make sure that they understand this. So we work with them. We film a lot of it, so I can you can look on our Instagram. There's a lot of cool footage of that stuff, but it's them just treating all the wounds and working as a team and just understanding what they're doing. And they get so shocked a lot of times when they when they when they come to the patient that they just freeze. It's like they forgot everything they've learned because they've never seen this before. Now there's blood just everywhere, and we didn't practice this earlier on. We did it to a degree, but not to that degree where there's a fake wound that looks very, very real. Like we have movie style blood, the whole thing. So it looks like a proper setup. And they absolutely love it. And what that also does for Rangers too, is it's a massive morale boost. And that's probably the biggest takeaway. Obviously, the learning is huge. But by boosting a ranger's morale keeps them at that job. It keeps them excited. It keeps them going. When they're out in the field for weeks and weeks on end away from their families with low pay, it can be degrading, especially if they're getting threatened in their communities where they live. That's when you start to question why you're doing what you're doing, and it's much more enticing for them. I'm not saying it's right, to then give in to the demands of a poaching syndicate that's threatening the lives of their family for an extra, for a bump in pay essentially, or for money every time they give away information on, where security might be, where the rhinos are, whatever, because the job they might think is just not treating them fairly. And management is also not great out here. I mean, I've seen some terrible people managing ranger units that just does not care for their well-being at all. And then what
Yeah.
do you think that does? That ruins an area. If you've got demoralized rangers, you may as well not have anybody out there at all. So that's just an example on a specific type of training that we do without taking up too much time. But it's that those are the gaps that we really like to fill, and we like to be there for them. And I mean, it's selfishly very rewarding for us because I love it. It's what they get out of it and how happy it makes them and how much they appreciate it. You could hear them all after the training. They're in their groups, and they're just not I don't even understand it, but that they're so happy. They're having a great time. They're learning a lot. So now we're getting asked to break into people's reserves and things like that and test the Rangers, and then at the end, we'll go down and fake an injury and whatever, and they've got to treat it. At that point, they don't shoot. We then tell them it's a joke, like, but you've got to treat them medically. But just to test their response time on finding us, if they find spore or human tracks next to a fence line, they've got to come find us. So anyway, it's that's just an example. So that's the kind of specialized stuff that we'd like to do, and we'd like to open up more of. Going down the line, and anything we can't do, we outsource. It's if someone contacts me with a request that we can't fill or we're not experts in, then it's like, well, wait a second, like let's see if we can find the funding for it. But I think you should go to this guy because he's much better at it. We obviously want to look after the Rangers and make sure they get the best quality training in whatever they're getting. So it's not, we're not throwing on the cape for everything. It's like, no, no, no. There's other people that do better work. Point them in that direction, and that's just how you have to be. Working together and making the best of conservation and the people who work in it.
Are some rangers corrupt?
Yes, there's plenty of corrupt rangers. In fact, in the Kruger National Park, there was a study recently that said between 40 to 70% of the employees inside the national park have at one point or another participated in the physical act of poaching and or passing along information. So it does happen. And just going back to what I just laid out about, the demoralization of rangers, that plays a very big factor. So if a syndicate is to get to the families and or the ranger in a community, unfortunately, that tactic does work. Is essentially bullying them into submission, and then you might just just like bad cops, you're going to get a bad cop here and there. It is what it is. We could limit that, and the Kruger just approved, I think it was last year, of polygraphing, so that's going to help. But there's a number of different circumstances that can lead a ranger to pass along information, to participate physically himself, and or to give away information. And you even have a lot of times where something happens to a ranger in the field and or they retire, they know the bush and that's all they know. So it's just a matter of, okay, let me just go back to what I know. I really don't, care about it too much. The job wasn't great. I'm gonna go back in and make a living just from doing it poaching illegally. So that's a very, very big problem. In fact, the majority of rhino poaching that exists in this area, that happens in this area, that occurs is done on inside jobs. So it's passed information from a ranger or an employee of a private reserve and or the park to someone on the outside.
What's the solution to that corruption?
The solution to that corruption is I think polygraphing is going to play a big role. But again, I'm a firm believer of supporting communities, and I think education is corruption's worst nightmare. So it doesn't mean you're going to fix all the bad apples, but if you, like I said, from the start, if you provide education, infrastructure, job opportunities to these communities, you're gonna they're gonna understand the importance and the value of biodiversity. If they're working in a place where they're getting good pay and they're not demoralized, and they see the value in biodiversity, they're going to protect it. And I learned that, in Zambia. It was a prime example. As soon as that happened, all of a sudden we were getting calls from people in the community. And then I had sources out in the community that were calling us if there was a strange car nearby or they heard someone talking that they're going to do this tonight. The community starts to protect, and look after what is feeding them. So I think it's you must start and then maintain a relationship with the local people. And it's not easy. It's a lot easier said than done. Negotiations can be very, very difficult, especially as a foreigner, but the solution to that is working directly with the communities for sure.
So, what technology are you guys using to stop poachers?
There's a number of different applications that you can use and even AI has stepped in a bit. There's Earth Ranger, there's I think it's Smart, and these are tools that what you can do is you you essentially it's all like a data collection application. So if an incident is to happen, whether it's a rhino that's shot or whether it's snare that's found, you can pin that on the application, and that will it'll just collect all this data essentially and tell you where poaching hotspots are or where the app then thinks you should go, that evening or that week or this spot to focus on. There's applications like that. That's all data collection, and then we'll use drones here and there, but that's region dependent. And the issue with drones is it's the ones that are really expensive are the ones that stay in the air the longest, and we can't afford that. Those are the fixed wing drones. So here we're just using commercial drones that have thermal technology, and that helps us with looking over small pieces of land, 'cause it's only, like I said, you might get 35, 40 minutes out of it. So that'll look over a small area, switch the battery, throw it up again. But mainly for reactions, it does help us because if we know of the area the crime is committed, we can throw that up and the thermal drone will pick up the heat signatures, and then we could follow the suspects or stay on top of the team that's reacting so that we can make sure that whatever's in front of them, they're essentially safe because we've got eyes right in front of them. So those are just a couple examples.
Do you have a volunteer program?
Not yet, and that's because if I opened one up, it would be, most of my time, or it would take up a lot of it that I just don't have right now in the building out of the organization. So, right now, the only volunteers that I am taking, I vet and have to have a very specific skill set that I do need. I'm hoping to have one, next year, but this program, I was originally gonna call it a volunteer program, but people are paying for it, so I wanna stay away from the word volunteer there and call it more of an introduction to conservation, or a conservation experience. So at the moment, I've probably had a dozen volunteers, non-paying, just to help me out on the ground. But again, they all had very specific skill sets that I needed at that time.
Do you have internships?
Yes, we do hold interns here. Depending on, again, it's depending on what we need. So from the legal perspective, we have students coming from Stanford Law School, and they help us put together whatever legal documents we might need for the organization, whether it's here and they've got to do more research because it's different law, and or back home. This one specifically is now coming for law and business, so she'll help me develop business plans and put them together, and I'll have a number of things that she'll have to look into, and that'll be her homework for the 8 weeks that she's here. So yes, we do internships. Obviously, all has to be appropriate to what we do, but yes.
Can I be an intern?
Sh- Sure, Mike. I'm happy to have you as an intern. What kind of intern do you want to be? What do you want to do?
Um, I want to follow you guys and make a documentary about the work you're doing. Does that count?
That counts. Yeah, that counts. If I just have to provide food and housing and transportation, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm coming
I
to,
imagine you've met a lot of people on these podcasts that you'd like to follow around.
yeah, and I'm coming to South Africa, up to Botswana, and then to the Okavango Delta next year. So we'll be able to do that.
Wow,
Mhm.
that is that's a huge treat. I haven't even been to the Okavango Delta yet. So
Hmm.
yeah, when you come here, let me know and we'll put some experiences together and we'll set up some time to do some good work. I'll have you meet a ranger team and get out to some orphanages and maybe do some veterinarian stuff and yeah, we'll definitely set you guys up with a good time that you can help and get some great content.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, so final question. If you had $1 million a year, what would you do?
If I had I'd go to the Bahamas. No, I'm kidding. If I had $1 million a year, I would I would invest it in buying more property to give back to wildlife, and community infrastructure. It would be entirely used for the generational growth of these ecosystems, and providing infrastructure to local communities. And if, trying to put together the perfect world where humans and wildlife can coexist peacefully is where I would invest every dollar of that money.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for talking with me today, John. And thank you for watching. You can help animals by hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel. I'll see you next time on Nature's Guardians.